Hello, I'm James.
Hi, I'm Jimmy.
Welcome to A Job Done Well.
The podcast about the world of work and how to improve the daily grind.
Good morning. What are we talking about today then?
Morning, James. Today we are talking about transformational leadership.
Ah, very good.
Now, we wanted to share a leadership style to add to people's toolkit that we thought was really important and impactful, would make a real difference. Before we get into it though, let's introduce our special guest, our L&D guru, as ever. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
And as we keep getting the feedback, she talks the most sense out of the three of us.
Yeah.
So we're
Good Lord, you're
very
in
honoured to
trouble.
have you back.
Not a huge achievement.
So, Amanda, what have you been up to since you were last with us?
I'm not even going to bore you with the gardening saga. I've been learning something new.
Have
What have you been learning?
I've been line dancing.
You've been
Oh, wow.
line dancing. Do you know what my mother once said to me? Just try everything once in life, James, except line dancing and incest. Let that be a lesson to you.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah,
Do you
my
know what?
pleasure.
I went in with this is for kind of old people. It's really easy. How hard can it be? Turns out it's harder than you might think.
And it's not for old people. I went to a 40th birthday last year and they had a line dancing teacher come in and do line dancing with them. So it's for all ages, but it is bloody hard. I'll grant you that.
It's definitely harder than you think. Thank you, Jimmy.
What have you been up to, James?
Well, I have been doing some work. We have been doing some work. We went and did a workshop with an organisation last week and helped them think through their acquisition processes. So that was all very interesting. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, they were really good.
Yeah.
Very, very open and very positive.
Nice to be let out.
But I've been, talking about being let out, I've been doing the opposite. Apart from working with you, James, I have been inside watching the Euros. So that's me for the next month.
How many matches are you in?
I've probably watched about 10. So today's episode, we wanted to do a leadership episode on a style that we felt would be really impactful. Inspirational leadership, because I guess anyone who's a leader, that's often what you want to aspire to and what you want to be called. But when we got into it, we realised that actually inspiration is really more of an outcome than a leadership style.
I need to cut across you there. I have been called an inspirational leader once.
Once.
Yeah. Right. Who was that, your mum?
No, I think it was somebody who wanted a pay rise. But that's a gag. Oh, go on. However,
Amanda, you had a look round to see if you could find something else that was equally as impactful.
Yeah.
What did you come up with?
We came up with the Transformational Leadership model, which we'll obviously discuss in a bit more detail. But what I love about it is kind of the vibe and energy that goes with the notion of transformational leadership.
So, what do we mean by transformational leadership then, Amanda?
So transformational leadership, that's a style that empowers people to accomplish positive change, usually preceded or essential actually is a big vision, that inspirational call to action, that shared purpose that you guys talk about a lot in the work that you do. And leaders who demonstrate transformational style enable change by emotionally connecting with their audience, inspiring them to achieve things that are greater than the individuals or greater than themselves.
Is distinct from transformation programs, which we did an episode on a while ago. This is about achieving change, achieving improvement, as opposed to a program that does it.
It's not about that. This is about the style, the behaviours, the attitude, the way of being for the leader rather than actually our project focus outcome.
There's so much change going on. This transformational leadership almost becomes the leadership style that everyone needs at some point.
yeah, I have a slightly different view on this.
Which is
Right, so first of all, let's be honest, I'm a little bit jury's out on this. It sounds very, would you believe, American. Yeah, it's a lot of clever words.
It is
So
American.
what exactly are we talking about? But isn't, how can I put this politely? So isn't this just about good management? I mean, what is so special?
I think you're right, but it is good management for today's climate, for today's environment. And in today's environment, you need to have this leadership style.
So what is this leadership style then? Go on, we have a rule on this podcast. Need to have a model. I like a good model.
We don't have a rule, Jade. You have a rule.
Okay, I have a rule. Explain
Let's
to
just
me.
go. Can we? Is it okay? We just take a
of course we
step,
can.
just one
We
step
could
back.
go right back to the beginning if you want to.
Maybe we should. Let's make the distinction between this, so transformational, which
Yeah.
we've talked about as being about energy and encouragement and shared vision and passion, collective energy towards a shared goal. I think what's useful is the distinction between that and transactional leadership style. So transactional being much more about the transaction between getting the work done
Yeah.
and goals and rewards. Arguably, performance management systems focus in that space. If you only focus on a transactional style, you only get so much effort. You only get so much work done. We're not saying there is not place for transactional leadership.
Well, it depends. If the building's burning, a little bit of transactional leadership, exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And there are other times when you need transactional leadership.
Go on.
Well, what happens if you have got somebody who is very young and inexperienced?
Yeah.
Exactly. Much more directive style.
The more we talk about leadership, the more we come to the conclusion there isn't one leadership style. What's needed will vary depending on the context and circumstance.
And that's the connection that I was making in my own mind. If your business will benefit from a really focused approach around a shared vision, if your resources are stretched, you're relying on discretionary effort from your team, transactional leadership is unlikely to get you that. Transformational leadership is likely to and is typified by getting even more.
So is it just about unlocking discretional effort?
It's actually about aligning, encouraging people around a shared vision, and one of the outcomes will be better developed for... Well, let's talk about that in the benefits section.
Well,
actually,
go
when we
on then.
explore that. You're right. Let's go to what are the characteristics.
So yeah, James loves a model.
James loves the model.
So what's the what have you found
Where's the
for us?
model?
So in the research, according to, let's give credit to the originators, Bass, Avolio and Atwater in 1996, they came up
Yes,
with
James. They are American.
They are American.
Yeah.
A transformational leadership model and transformational leaders, according to them, have 4 key characteristics. So let's have a look at them. One, so the terminology they called idealized influence.
So what's that then?
So this is about leaders who serve as highly liked role models. They themselves exhibit charisma. They inspire their followers through their actions and their vision. So it's kind of about who they are as a character.
So charisma, I should say.
Yeah, nice word for it. Liked, loved, those kind of leaders that get called out for being just a good guy.
Yeah, the one you'd run through walls for.
Yeah,
Over the trenches.
really good person. Yeah. So that's one. Another characteristic is inspirational motivation. So they're optimistic about goal attainment, they're encouraging and they're motivating of their team.
So is that just being very clear about purpose then?
Yeah, it's about purpose, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's a good way of putting it. Another is about intellectual stimulation. So transformational leaders promote critical thinking, problem solving, challenging their followers to explore new ideas, to not settle for the status quo, but to look for even better ways of doing things, for example.
Yeah, that's a bit more difficult though, isn't it? And so what is that? Does that, and we'll go with the negatives, does that mean they're not dogmatic? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that's the right space. This is much more about what's possible, and when we've achieved that, what else is possible. So continually seeking improvements, way to do things better.
So it is creating a climate of continuous improvement.
Yeah, right up your street, right? And then individualized consideration. I like this. So they show empathy, they see and hear the individuals, or at least they make those people feel seen and heard in the organisation. They're very supportive of personal and individual growth, as well as the growth of the business.
So empathy.
Yeah, nice one.
They don't use one word when two will do they? Okay, can you be a British model next time?
No, but I love the...
Ethics.
I love the...
They're the only decent models we've made.
Right, keep going. Ignore the hecklers.
So let's see if we can bring that to life a little bit more. Let's look at individualized influence. So we've talked about this a little bit, but this is about walking your own talk. This is about a leader who embodies the qualities that they want to see reflecting in their organisation. So that this is not just, I'm going to tell you what to do, off you go and do it. They actually live and breathe this themselves.
And I think this is one of those areas where a lot of leaders really struggle because they can talk a good talk, but they don't often walk the talk either.
Yeah, I learned this expression once on some training about the difference between your espoused values, what you say you stand for, and then your values in action. And for leaders, it's watching out for the gap between those.
Okay.
So the influence in this particular case comes from you being perceived and understood by your followers to actually live and breathe those values and ethics. And
Well, and
standards.
it's interesting, isn't it? Because you can actually tell when somebody doesn't, at the risk of being a bit crude, the collar and cuffs don't match, and it's something that we instinctively pick up on. Yeah, and it ruins.
Well, I think it turns people off. I think you don't trust people who say one thing and then do something else. And I think if you're not, people do soon find you out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
The show you're listening to right now brings you insights to help you improve performance and enjoyment of work.
It takes a long time to produce, but we think it's well worth it. It's all in the name of helping you getting the job done well.
All we ask in return is that you share the link to this show with someone that you think would benefit from it. And if you haven't already, click on follow the show wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. Anyway, let's get back to the show.
Idealized influence, these leaders become a source of admiration and respect among their followers. So people actually look at them, look up to them for the way they conduct themselves.
Well, hang on. How many managers have you had who you actually look up to?
Well, one example I have, I've chatted to you about this guy. In fact, I think you know him, Brian Cole, who I would...
Cat One.
From Cat One, that's right. I would genuinely hold up as an exemplar of a transformational leader.
And why? What did he do? Why you'd hold him up?
We would run a training program regularly and ask people to think about someone who'd always had who they regarded as being influential or a great leader. Consistently, Brian Cole's name would be called out as someone that people looked up to as a leader and admired for holding strong values, living and demonstrating those strong values and having a positive impact on them.
You called out 4 ways that transformational leaders show up, but it isn't one thing, is it? It is a bit of all 4
Exactly.
that you'll play into situations.
Exactly, these things in combination. So let's talk about inspirational motivation. We talked about that very briefly, but this is about creating a compelling vision, one that sets the stage for extraordinary achievements. It's beyond goal setting. It's not about those kind of individual, very specific SMART goals. It's about a sense of purpose that actually brings people together.
Yeah, and this is something we bang on about incessantly, but you need a higher purpose. You need to be doing something that is useful for something or somebody. Otherwise, nobody's going to get excited about it. And if nobody's going to get excited about it, you can't expect any discretionary effort, can you?
Exactly right.
Do you remember James, you and I worked for a certain insurer, and they did a whole rebranding exercise, and they talked about this organisation's purpose was around keeping you moving and helping people get on with their lives, and they did some fantastic work, really moving stuff around the importance of insurance. Absolutely tick the box massively on this bit, but then you didn't really see the leaders follow through. Back to the first bit, you didn't see that, did you?
Just dreadful, because actually, I mean, insurance has got a really bad rep, but when you think about it, it's an incredibly useful thing.
And they had, but because they didn't have leaders that then obsessed about it and inspired people towards it,
It never quite
it
delivered.
never really did. It never delivered that
quite,
purpose that it really set out to.
I mean, I think that's a really, really good example. So the leadership behaviour there is the talent we've talked about is the ability to be able to, 1, have the vision, and 2, then share it with people in a way that kind of compels them to act. Now this, you asked me about Brian, he went on a course himself, came back from that leadership development course with his early version of vision for the organisation, what we would achieve together, shared that, put that out, created a really, really compelling story that almost anyone could repeat. But actually what was so magical about it was resonated with individuals at the level of their job. So the vision was such that as I'm doing my work, I would be able to explain how my work fitted or contributed to that vision. Do you see what I mean? And that's the galvanising effect.
Okay, so there's the first 2. Charisma and purpose. What's number 3?
So the next one we talked about was intellectual stimulation. So this is actually about the leader challenging followers to be innovative, creative, asking them to continually be looking at what's happening in the organisation, seeking improvements.
This is James's sweet spot, continuous improvement.
Yeah.
This for me is really important though, and I said earlier on.
I said to you it's his sweet spot. There you
But
go.
I said not dogmatic. So what I've seen in so many organisations is this is the way we do it. Yeah, these are the 10 commandments. On we go.
Yeah.
And you challenge the 10 commandments, and you're just wasting your time. And it is like religion in the Middle Ages. Yeah, there was no progress in the economy at all because everybody followed the way of the church, and that was the way it was, and so therefore it just stifled everything.
Yeah.
So that whole ability to challenge what is being done and problem solving, I think it's really important.
And to accept that challenge
Yeah.
as well. You know, because sometimes
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
you see in leadership is the challenge presents itself, it's been invited apparently, but actually when it shows up, not
threats,
welcome.
You don't like it. Yeah, yeah.
So that's the
So it
espoused
takes
value and value in action disconnect.
Where I have seen this work really well is I went round Google's offices in Mountain View, and there it was built into the fabric of what they did. When you talk to the people, you got a real sense of their desire to improve. You get the whole thing around 20% time and giving their people time to innovate, through to having wonderful facilities that people could collaborate really effectively to try and improve their business. It was part of their DNA.
Yeah. So there you go. So that's number 3, and what was the 4th part?
The last characteristic is individualized consideration. So this is very much in the space of creating an environment where every team member feels recognized, valued, their contribution is understood and regarded as important.
Well, sorry, I cut across, but that's really, I mean, the other 3. So I've seen charismatic leaders, and I've seen purposeful leaders, and I've seen people who invite challenge, but actually being empathetic, that's hard work, right?
It is on an individual basis. I think generally you can be empathetic
In general,
in situations or generally, but doing it to all the individuals, I think is, I think you're right, James. I think it's tough.
If you've got a team of 100 people, you need to know what all 100 people are and what they want.
And certainly make them feel like that's what's
And if
happening.
you've got an organisation with a couple of thousand people in, then it really becomes very difficult.
You had a really good example of that, though, James.
I had a team, and it was a team of about 80 people or something like that.
Yeah.
And we did an employee survey, and we got dreadful results. And so I just sat down with each one of them and bought them all a cup of coffee and spoke to them and to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
And, it sounds obvious, but if you've got 80 people and you spend half an hour with each one of them, that's a week out of your life gone. So you've got to be very sure that that is the right thing to do. And I don't think most people are.
Yeah, no.
Never mind about the 300 quid you spent in coffee. Jesus.
Yeah, we're not saying it's easy, but what we are talking about here is exemplars. Again, total fangirl here, but Brian, a great example. One day, Brian actually stood at the top of the stairs. Remember the building at Capital?
Yeah.
So as people were coming in, literally high-fiving everybody as they walked into the building.
Not me, I didn't dip round the back.
Not
I could
you.
cope with that.
Well, exactly. It's quite a lot, right, to put yourself out there. One, to take the time and the energy and the effort to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And, not everybody loves this stuff, but point being, are you going to take the time, the energy to do it? Are you going to remember the name of the lady that's doing the cleaning?
And then, absolutely. And it's a simple,
Hard work.
simple stuff like that. Just even remembering people's names.
It is.
Well, I had a couple of examples. That one, I had a boss years ago, Paul, and he used to say good night to everyone. Like literally, he used to stand by the door. And it was like the 5 o'clock rush. He used to say good night to everyone, safe journey home, straight home, that sort of stuff. Just just showing that he was bothered about them, and thank them for their day's work.
But that's what it's all about, right? The people feeling like you've given them the opportunity, they are personally developing, and they've had your attention. That's what we're describing.
I agree with James, though. I think the other 3, I think they can be, that you can either do them or they're part of your DNA. I think the 4th one is a difficult one. I remember once when I went to see our operations in India, spent a whole week there, and at the end of it, the leadership team asked for feedback, and there was about 20 or 30 of them, and I went around the room and talked to each individual of them and said something I appreciated about them. Jesus, it was such hard work, though. I mean, it had a massive impact on them. I could see the impact it had. Yeah, But that's possibly the only time I've been able to do that, even though I could see the impact, because it's just the amount of thought and energy and remembering and being authentic about it. That's the real art in this. So I think this is a tough one.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm feeling compelled to summarise that again then before we go into the so what. So I've got 4 things. Ideally, you'd like a leader who's charismatic, purposeful, not dogmatic, and empathetic.
Yes.
Right? And if somebody is like that, what are the benefits then?
There are going to be tons, but one of them is that you get to be working in a culture or an environment where everybody's unique strengths and talents are recognised in the organisation you're working for. What's not to love?
Well, I think to your point as well, James, this unlocks the discretionary effort, creates real momentum. A lot of people love working in this sort of environment.
Yeah, and much as it pains me,
It does.
and
Go
it
on,
does. I can see this. So let me, because I can. It's a bit more. My approach is a bit more flat earth. But are they purposeful? Do they know where they're going? Well, you ain't going to be any flipping good if you don't, right? Are they charismatic? Can they charm people and get people to go in that general direction? Well, they don't do that, they won't get anywhere. Do they challenge themselves and the people around them to think critically about what they're trying to achieve? Because you ain't getting far without that.
Well, driving continuous improvement, it's kept you in a job for a few years,
Yeah,
hasn't
for
it?
30 years. Yeah.
But it is.
Yeah.
You do need that sort of environment to be successful.
And then the final bit, are they empathetic? Do they understand what's going on for their team members?
Yeah.
So actually, and this is, and I don't wish to decry it, but this is what I would just call good management. What's really tragic is it's built up as this big thing, transformational leadership, because you don't see it that
No.
often.
It's rare.
Yeah.
And I also think the other thing is, James, it is the interplay between those 4 things.
Yeah, yeah.
You sometimes see somebody, as an example, I've seen leaders who are incredibly charismatic, but nobody really follows them because they don't have alignment between their actions and what they say.
Yep.
So, you see people do bits of these styles, but all 4 together, I think you're right. You could say it's good management, but it's pretty
rare.
unique to see all 4.
Stephen Covey's the 7 Habits guide
Yeah.
expression for this is common sense, but is it common practice?
Yeah, that's a great
And
way
that's
of
where
putting
the
it.
power is, right?
However, before James gets in, what are the downsides of this leadership style? I mean, we touched on it's difficult, it's tough. It's tough.
Go on. Well, there's
Well,
a
no,
few.
yeah.
So one, there is the potential, that's in the continuous improvement space, but that burnout that
Yeah.
comes with it needs to be better. We need to do more.
We're
blah,
never
blah,
good,
blah, blah.
never good enough. Never good enough.
Yeah, there's the potential for that.
And that takes a huge amount of humility as well.
That's true.
Yeah, because most managers stand there saying how great they are.
Yeah. I also think there are some people who this style will really jar against. Some people who just are really, really change averse. They just want to do things the same old way.
I think there are a lot of people who are so unused to being asked what their opinions are. When somebody rocks up and says to them, right, I want you to improve your work, they look at them like they're mad. So you get a huge amount of inertia with that.
I think that's more common than
Yeah.
we even realise too. I think you said this is hard. This requires continuous communication to be effective. The leader themselves have to be front and centre of talking about policy, sharing the direction over and over again, repeating, finding different forms to make sure they're delivering the message, keeping everyone on board.
How do you go about developing this leadership style?
That's the question you always come to, right?
Yeah, and we always look
Hit
at
me
you
with that.
at that point, our L&D queen.
Bless you. Well, a number of ways. One, actually, I discovered that there is because there always is, a leadership questionnaire.
Put a link in.
And that's an instrument for assessing your transformational and transactional leadership behaviour style. So that's just an interesting experiment to do, I would say.
Right.
So do you think this is really developable? Motivation, having purpose, right? You can go on a course, they can teach you how to write a purpose statement. Can you teach somebody to be more charismatic?
I don't know if you can, but you can make sure that you've got alignment between what you say is important and how you behave and act. So I think there are aspects of it you can
So
learn.
really it's just about feedback then, is it?
I mean, yeah, there is no more powerful tool in development than feedback. It's paying attention to that feedback, it's absorbing it, and then let me adjust and see whether I can do something different. But the step before all of that is working out what are your values, and there are exercises that help with that, because not everyone is clear.
No one's clear. Yeah.
We all operate like we think we know what our values are, I guess. That's a generalised statement I make. But actually, do you really?
And I think there's also something in having the confidence to share your values and your thoughts with people, as opposed to I'm telling you that we all must do better, we all must make profit, we all must, those mechanical things. Leaders are often quite comfortable, but actually talking about what's important to them and what they believe and what their vulnerabilities are, I think that takes a different type of confidence.
Yeah. And the other important thing is when you do have it, then make sure you recognise it and you keep it within your organisation and value it, because it will be easy to disregard and then you've lost something.
So
You've lost the magic. So despite your scepticism at first, are you seeing the benefits of this leadership?
I don't think it's a leader. I'm sorry. I don't think it's a leadership style. This is how you should have people show up. That's my point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All the time.
All the time.
So
frankly.
you really are converted
Well,
then.
yeah.
Not pleased.
That's it. It's the only leadership style
That's
for
it.
James.
Well.
We wanted to, help people unlock how they become inspirational leaders. I think if you did these things, people would talk about you as being an inspirational leader.
Yeah.
So I think in that original conversation we had, this definitely ticks the box to the outcomes. I think James's point is a good one, though. It's a shame we don't see it more often, but hopefully the model that you've shared and the activity that you've highlighted are ways that people can practice and do that better. And as a result, to the purpose of this podcast, performance and enjoyment will undoubtedly follow.
Hurrah.
Hopefully everyone's enjoyed today's episode. If you want to find out more about transformational leadership or just how it should be done, according to James, then get in touch with us. Thanks, Amanda. It's been
Thanks,
great
everyone.
again.
Thank you. Nice
See
to
you soon.
Cheers now.
Oh, one final thing. Don't miss next week's episode. It's our season finale. We're going to take a short break over the summer before coming back with season 2. But next week we'll be covering some of the highlights and lowlights of this season, and no doubt some of the many, many outtakes we've had. So don't miss next week's episode.
We cover a whole host of topics on this podcast,
From purpose to corporate jargon.
but always focused on one thing: getting the job done well.
Easier said than done. So if you've got unhappy customers or employees, bosses or regulators breathing down your neck,
If your backlogs are out of control and your costs are spiralling, and that big IT transformation project that you've been promised just keeps failing to deliver,
we can help. If you need to improve your performance, your team's performance, or your organisation's, get in touch at jimmy@ajobdonewell.com.
or James@jobdonewell.com.